Hello and welcome to the virtual college exploration for all Wisconsin students. Thanks for everyone for attending. For everyone in the audience, just know that you can pose your questions to our panelists at any point in time by clicking the Q&A button on your screen. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. And feel free to sign up for any other sessions at wacac.com, WACAC.com. You'll also find the recording for this session and all of the sessions available on that page. So without any further ado, I'd love to turn it over to our panelists. Take it away.
Thanks, Dan. Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Wagner, and I am Director of Admissions at St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota. But more importantly, tonight I'm here representing colleges that change lives, and I am delighted to be joined by two of my favorite colleagues in this amazing profession, and I would love it if they can unmute themselves and tell you who they are and where they are from.
Hello, my name is Karen Smith, and I am the Midwest Regional Admission Manager for Beloit College. That's a long title. What it means is I get to oversee the recruitment efforts at Beloit in 6 of our Midwest states, and I get to live in Chicago. So welcome.
Thanks, Karen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Beth Petrie. Everybody calls me Beth, so I invite all of our panelists and attendees to call me Beth. I'm the Dean of Admissions at Lawrence University in Appleton, Wisconsin. Welcome.
Great. Thanks for being here. Students, we are thrilled that you have decided to join us. I want to start by simply acknowledging the context in which we are meeting. Typically, college that change lives travels around the country, and I know that Beth and Karen and myself take great joy in meeting face-to-face with students. And the whole point of CTCL is to really focus on a student-centered college search and to reduce the amount of stress that all of you are going through as you're thinking about colleges. I certainly want to recognize that I think COVID has ratcheted up the stress surrounding the college search process. I know that many colleges and universities around the country are closed to visitors, but I want you to go into this process feeling rest assured that colleges and universities are doing everything that they can to make sure that this process is accessible to you in a virtual way. So what the plan is for tonight is I'm going to speak a little bit generally about colleges that change lives. And then I want to turn things over to Beth and Karen to talk a little bit about how their schools sort of embody the philosophy that we talk about when we talk about colleges that change lives. We also certainly want to leave plenty of time for questions that you may have related to the organization, your college search, and for any advice that would be helpful for you. So to start, I think it's super important for you to know that Colleges That Change Lives, CTCL, is a nonprofit organization that really was founded in thinking about the best interest of students in the college search process. Students, this might sound like a novel concept, but we think you are full, complete, whole people. We think that your GPA, we think that your test score does not tell the full story of who you are. So this is a group of colleges and universities that are focused on a student-centered approach to recruitment, holistic admissions review, and that means that we're really focused on your best interest in helping you find a fit that you think is good for you. The nonprofit was founded specifically to help students think past rankings, to think past the sort of media frenzy around college selectiveness. We want to really help families and students understand the benefits of a liberal arts education. And this group of schools is committed to traveling and promoting this mission around the country and around the world. Very quickly, we are comprised of a really diverse set of institutions. I love traveling with this group when I have on my St. Olaf hat. And it's really fun because the institutions all bring something really unique to the table. So you can see that there's 2 public institutions, 43 private colleges and universities from over 26 states. All of these schools are relatively small liberal arts and sciences colleges with the average size being about 1,500 students. Here is a very long list of all of the schools And if you are interested in learning more about any of these schools, I would certainly encourage you to check out the Colleges That Changed Lives website. I know many of you are just getting started in your search process. And I think getting started can be a hard thing because I feel like there are a lot of influences probably guiding how you think about things. So I know that some of you are probably wondering, well, should I look at US News and World Report rankings? I have heard of the Ivy Leagues. I've heard of the Big Ten. I've heard of public land grant institutions. What else is there? I feel like right now there's a big narrative in our country about thinking about return on investment and what do you get out of your education. I think one of the things that we're really focused on is thinking about these as small schools, but schools that provide huge opportunities for students. One of the things that I think we really wanted to focus on with Colleges That Change Lives is moving beyond the rankings. And so this is a sample of how US News and World Report, which is kind of the pioneer of college rankings, how they think about building their rankings. So you can see that this is the list of things that they consider in their algorithm to rate colleges and universities around the country. What I always encourage students and families to really think about is, well, hey, is this reflective of your personal values? Does it matter how selective an institution is? Does it matter more if there's more social mobility? What does peer assessment mean? So none of these are perfect. So this is just a way of sort of thinking about maybe what your own values might be and how that could guide your search. One of the things that I think is really important to think about is what actually happens in the 4 years that you will be at a college or university. So one of the things that we like to talk about is there was a Gallup Purdue Index survey in 2015 that essentially surveyed graduates from all over the country. I will leave the link in the PowerPoint so you can access it later. And one of the things that they were really focused on was these questions on this slide. Do students graduate well-equipped to find good jobs, prosper financially, as well as pursue their passions and lead full, healthy lives? The main takeaways that I can tell from this survey is that sometimes it doesn't matter where you go to college, and what matters more is how you go to college. So how do you take advantage of the experiences that are put in front of you? How do you build relationship with your professor about your future? The type of school alumni went to, in some ways, had less to do with the specific experiences that students had when they were students there. So what's really telling is that students are able to speak about a relationship that they had with the professor, something meaningful that they did academically, a project, paper, research that they shared with the broader community. Those high impact experiences, I think, really profoundly shape how students think about what they get out of college. One of the things that you can think about, I won't read this whole slide to you, but here's a list of some questions that you can really think about to guide your search and really help you think about what is of value to you. So I think this is a funny process because in some ways, everyone asks you what you want and what you're looking for. And sometimes I think it's okay to say that you don't know. And I think one of the best ways you can get to know is by getting to know a diverse set of schools and finding what clicks with you and where you can see yourself. Another resource I want to point you to, and I'm going to watch the clock so that we make sure that Beth and Karen have plenty of time to speak, but Nessie, the National Survey of Student Engagement, essentially tracks the experiences through surveys that college students have. So it's focused on engagement, high impact practices, and this is a really interesting way for you as students to think about what's happening during the 4 years. All of the data is really accessible and readily available to you. Not every school participates, but you can see that quite a few CTCL schools do participate. And the vast majority of students indicate that they had some sort of high impact learning practice, they built relationships with others, and those experiences carried forward with them. These are some of the educationally effective practices that Nessie addresses. So these are things that you can think about when you're thinking about what might be a good match for you. And here is the link for that if you'd like to look after the presentation. The final thing I want to talk about is outcomes. And I think that there's a lot of focus on that right now. As you can see, here's a quick summary of what some CTCL graduates are going on to do. So I think it's really important for you to think about the quality of education and how that sets you up for your next steps. You can see that CTCL graduates are going on to earn some of the most prestigious scholarships, fellowships. So I think it's really important to think about in your search, asking about outcomes and how students are encouraged to reflect on their vocation, on their calling, and how they might make a difference in their local communities. There is tons of great data out there. This is a slide that I think is really interesting. So it's the undergraduate origins of doctoral degrees, and it's not split out by Carnegie classification, but you can see that Reed College, which is a college that changed lives, is essentially listed in every single different category for being a leading producer for sending students on to earn PhDs in all fields, which I think is really interesting. If I put on my St. Olaf hat, I could tell you that St. Olaf sends more students on to earn PhDs in mathematics compared to any other liberal arts college in the country. So when I'm working with students who are interested in mathematics, that's a great proof point to be able to say, well, hey, caliber of this program is really, really strong, and it's going to set you up to do really well after you graduate. There is a link in here. Reed compiles this data in a super accessible way, so you can go and check that out on your own. I think one of the things that a lot of people focus on is what happens immediately after students graduate from college. And I think that that's fine. I think it's important to think about what your first destination is, whether that be job, grad school, volunteering, service. But I think it's really important to remember that this is a long-term game. So you can see that increased earnings over the lifespan of a liberal arts graduate increased pretty dramatically compared to some of the students who might secure higher paying jobs immediately out of college. I think it's important for you to remember that liberal arts education is about, of course, going deep in a particular subject area, but it's all about making connections. It's all about being intellectually curious. I think it's about collaborating with others. I think it's about learning to write well, learning to speak well, learning to tackle really complex problems and analyze data from a variety of different perspectives. And I think if you look at a lot of the things that are happening in our world right now, I think the people who are best equipped to think about some of these really complex issues are people who are able to do all of these different things. People who are able to relate to people from different backgrounds, bring in different cultural competencies, and think really meaningfully and deeply about ultimately what's important. Before we talk a little bit with Beth and Karen about how their schools bring this mission to life on their campuses, I just want to put in a quick plug. You can follow us on social media. I think it's a great way and super easy way to get a sense of what's happening at the member institutions. The Facebook page is also updated regularly, and sometimes that has really interesting articles or thoughts about what's going on in higher education. So I will pause there. And I would love to turn it over to Karen. Do you want to start and tell us a little bit about at Beloit, how Beloit sort of lives out being a CTCL school?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. Thanks, Dave. I'll remind students, if you have questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A box so that we can respond to those. We all do work in college admissions, so we can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. You know, this is what we do every day in our job. But we really would much rather address concerns or questions that you have. I'm so glad I get to talk about this because as Dave and Beth know, I just left another non-CTCL school where I was working for a short period of time. Very, very good school, much bigger, much different. And now I'm back what feels like home. I've worked at 2 different CTCL schools and attended one. So I have drunk the Kool-Aid, so to speak. What I will tell you that Beloit is doing right now that lives the CTCL mission is how we have reacted to the pandemic. We were one of the first schools in the country to really stand up last March and say, okay, we've got a plan. We call it the Beloit Action Plan, which is a lovely wave, nod of the head to a Beloit plan that existed a number of years ago. But we quickly switched to 4 modules as opposed to 2 semesters, because we knew that if we had to ask students to study virtually, handling 2 classes instead of 4 would be easier. Our mods are now each 7.5 weeks long instead of a 15-week semester. And so if we have to quickly switch to virtual or allow students to come back, and our students are back, by the way, our new schedule allows for that. And so that was very student focused. We also have developed an advanced mentoring program, we call it AMP, because we knew that students just had tons of questions and also lots to talk about, because there's a lot of uncertainty right now. And so with our new advising program, students, the minute they tell us that they are planning to come to Beloit in the fall, they will get a phone call from their first advisor at Beloit in 72 hours. And so they will start a relationship with that first person in helping to establish what their kind of roadmap at Beloit is going to look like. And that AMP group actually becomes a class, a small class in that first module, and then again, second module, where students have a place to discuss and talk and things like that. The final thing I will say is we reacted from a financial standpoint. Reading the news, nobody reads the news anymore. I read the news. Listening to the news, hearing the news, watching it on social media is overwhelming. And currently what's happening in the state of Wisconsin today is overwhelming. And so what we wanted to do was to address issues that are going on both personally, but also from a financial standpoint. And so what Beloit has done is to say to our students, if you're enrolled full-time, degree granting at Beloit this fall, and you want to take extra time to complete your degree or participate fully in different activities that we offer, like athletics and music performances, senior recitals, we will offer you the opportunity to come back for an extra term or an extra year tuition free. And we just feel that that was the best thing that we could do, one of the best things we could do for our students. And then the final thing I'll say is this, and this is not unique to Beloit. I think this is unique to CTCL schools. We really lean in regards to allowing our students to have a very big voice in what happens on our campuses. We kind of see it as their campus, not our campus. And so you will see on the Beloit website a statement of culture that very boldly talks about what we are all about at Beloit. And that statement of culture was designed and implemented and offered by our students. It wasn't something that the administration gave to them. It was something that they gave to our community. And it's helped to steer many of the decisions that we've made as to how we are reacting to the current pandemic and how we will continue to function moving forward.
Great.
That's what I got.
Loren.
Yeah.
Beth, tell us a little bit about Loren's.
I'd be happy to. When I came to work for Loren's 8 years ago, I came from a university that was not a CTCL organization, and I was really intrigued by this idea of the organization and the idea of the commitment to student-centered, not just admissions. It is student-centered admissions, right? But it's also the way that we approach so much of our education at the colleges that change lives. Like Karen mentioned, really just infusing the students and putting them at the center of our practices. I know that may sound like that's how it's supposed to be, right? I mean, it's common sense that that's how it's supposed to be, but that's just not how it is in so many different places. And so I had been working at Loren's for a year when our president, Mark Burstein, came to be our current president. He came from Princeton University. And one of the first questions that he asked was, what do students need to be the most successful at Lawrence? What is it that they need? And it came up with a short list by surveying and engaging with committees and everything around campus. And the short list was really about how can we adjust our practices to get the students what they need. One of the things that we determined that we needed was to raise money for financial assistance, more money for financial assistance. We embarked on a financial fundraising campaign for $85 million and just passed that mark this summer to be able to put that funding towards financial assistance to make it easier for students and families to afford to come to Lawrence. It means that we're better able to meet students' financial need. It means that over the past 5 years, we have actually reduced reliance on student loans, which is, you know, something that is it's not common. I'll just say that, okay. But this is just the one example of you know, how coming at this question, what do students need? You know, it was a big solution. It was a lot of work, and like I said, a number of years in the making. But the question is, and asking them, finding out from them what they need. We have students who are on our curriculum planning groups, with our faculty. And during this time period, of course, while we've been adjusting our practices and our curriculum for a number of different modes, in person, hybrid, online, it's allowed us to engage with the students and find out what their experience is, what they need from us, and how we can meet that. In admissions, I mentioned that we're student-centered in our admissions practices. A number of the colleges that change lives have been test optional for many, many years, and take a holistic approach. And not everyone is test optional, but a lot of us are. And we take a holistic approach to reviewing applications for admission and scholarships. It means that we're looking for not just what's on the proverbial paper, but what is it that makes you you? What is it that makes a student special? What's their story? I've known Karen for a lot of years, and I know that her favorite part of the admissions job is reading applications, right, Karen? Yeah. She reminds us of that every winter.
Yes, it is. It is my favorite part, and I've done it for a long time, and it never gets old because every student is unique, and they have a different story. And so I think one of the reasons that we're sad not to be seeing each other this summer, because the CTCL schools travel together on different tours in the summer, is that is often a topic of conversation when we're all together in a room. Oh my gosh, I have to tell you about the student, and oh my gosh, right? And just what we're seeing and how things are changing, and really leaning into the individual student. And so as Beth said, and I know this of St. Olaf, where Dave works, it is about, we're looking for reasons to admit students. And we're also looking for students who are going to bravely come to our schools and make a difference, and we'll support them in doing that.
Yeah, great. Do we want to take some questions now?
Yeah, students, I was going to say, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat, and I will ask questions of Beth and Karen. We have, our first question is, does CTCL accept students with different learning plans, like a 504 or an IEP? So if you could answer that, and maybe speak a little bit about academic support and advising, that would be great.
Beth, want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure, I'll kick it off. Absolutely, we have a number of students who have different learning needs, and typically when a student's applying to Lawrence, they tell us about that. They don't have to, but many of them do tell us about what their learning needs are in their application, or sometimes during the admissions interview when we're connecting with them. And that allows us to connect them with our Center for Academic Success early. We can say, we're going to set you up with our dean, or we're going to set you up with our assistant dean of student success, and you can talk to them about what your 504 says, what your IEP plan is, and just talk about how we would go about meeting those needs at Lawrence. I mentioned the Center for Academic Success, or Center for Academic Success, CIS, just making sure I got that right. It's a center for all students. It does, at Lawrence, we do tutoring. We have academic success counseling sessions. It is a way for us to check in with students. All students are engaged with the center in some way. It's not just students who have different learning needs. And over half of our students use the tutoring services at some point. So it's just a part of who we are, because, like Karin said, everyone has a different story, everyone has a different path.
The only thing that I would add to that is this question is a question that you should and can ask every school that you're considering. And I think for students in this process, a lot of emphasis is placed on us accepting you, right? So it seems that we're the only stakeholders here. And we know that's just the opposite, right? So it's really about you accepting us. And so for students, as you're going through the process, you want to do the homework to find out what schools are going to offer you what you believe you need to be successful. And if a school doesn't, you should say off the list.
Beth and Karin, will you talk a little bit about what are the benefits of living in a residential campus community? I think that's a real commonality for many of our schools. Mm-hmm. And I think it makes school about more than just school. I think it makes it about life and community. Will you talk a little bit about that at both of your institutions?
Yeah, I happen to know that Lawrence, I believe, has a 4-year on-campus living requirement. Beloit has a 3-year on-campus living requirement. And the reason we do that is because we believe as much good learning takes place outside the classroom as inside the classroom. And I will give you an example. When I went away to school, my freshman year was the first time I had my own bed, let alone my own room. I happened to be in a room that was called a walk-through double. And so my roommate and I could have put both of our beds in the back room and had like a study room in the front room, but we didn't know each other that well. And so instead we each kind of had our own rooms. She was from Worcester, Massachusetts. And if you've ever talked with anyone from Worcester, Massachusetts, they have a very, very distinct accent. And I couldn't understand some of the things she was saying to me. And I was like, wait, you live in this country, right? And how do and so the differences in her upbringing and the differences in my upbringing were pretty vast. On the other hand, we had a lot in common. And so I feel like, and she's still a good friend of mine, right? So what we learned from each other, what I had to think really hard about when she challenged a belief that I had respectfully, when I told her that water actually has an R on the end and you have to pronounce the R, you can't say water, which is what she said. It led to some great and lovely conversations. And so I think what we appreciate about residence life is the learning that takes place in being part of a community.
Yeah, I'll add that for many of us, Dave had said that many of us have this kind of commonality of being a residential college or university, and for many of us, it's a part of our philosophy about education. It's about because we believe that so much learning takes place outside of the classroom, right? That if you come to Lawrence wanting to be a neuroscience major and you're so math and science heavy, you might have a roommate or a friend down the hall who's a flute player, and you're suddenly going to flute solo performances or ensembles to support them, and you're learning so much about the things that are important to them as well, and you're also resolving conflicts together. And during times like we're living in right now, the ability to have that community that you have built as a result of living and learning together has made our I think the response of the community that much more important, and it's given them a family, really, a family of people who are all very different from them, come from all over the country and all over the world, but are relying and leaning on each other during their times of need.
Well said. Will you talk a little bit about inclusion? It's something I've been thinking a lot about this summer, and if I'm a prospective student, how do I know that I will be welcomed for who I am? How do I know if these are my people? What are questions that I can ask about support on campus? What are your thoughts on that?
I'll piggyback to start off with on what Karen had started to share earlier about about choosing colleges. I always tell students and families, when we're reading an application for admission, we're asking ourselves two questions. Does the student fit at our institution? Is this a student a good fit here? And is the institution a good fit for the student, right? So is Lawrence a good fit for you? Are you a good fit for Lawrence? Those are the same two questions that students are asking themselves. And they're just asking it from their perspective, right? And I think students who are for whom they're looking for an institution where they will be included and they will feel at home and welcomed, they'll often seek clues, right? And there's often visual cues to inclusion, and they're familiar with them, right? If they think about it, they know what they are. And you'll see it even now in a virtual environment on our websites, and in our statements that we make, when we have events, when we have even virtual events, who is there? Who's there on screen? Who's in the room? Who is running our institutions, right? Who's making the decisions? And are they people who I can relate with, or who I know care about me and my differences and me and my own individuality, right? And then there's just the straight out asking questions, right? You can just ask us. You can ask your admissions counselor. You can ask your tour guides if you go to visit campuses. We have a lot of ways right now that you can connect personally with us virtually, and you really should take the opportunity as much as possible to say, do you have an organization that supports this? Do you have a campus group that supports X? You might want to ask, what happens during difficult, challenging times when students are maybe protesting or upset? How does the institution respond to those things?
The only thing I'll add is it does take some work, right? I think the vast majority of high school students are coming out of a high school that was built on where they live. And we kind of have a sense for what the community where we live is like. And many of us have lived there for a long time. And oftentimes our neighbors look a lot like us. And so the idea of going someplace where there may be a lot of other people that A, we don't know, and B, don't look like us, is both overwhelming and exhilarating. And that's the balance that you need to find. If we go back to what we talked about before, what is important to me individually from an inclusion standpoint may be very different than it is for Beth or David. Certainly different than it was for some of my own children, right? And so I think you have to know what you want and then ask and look and dig in on several different layers. I think one of the most exciting things about schools like the CTCL schools is the fact that you would likely struggle to find some of the common groups or niches that you see at typical large public high schools, where the athletes are over here and the theater students are over here and never the two shall meet. And yes, you know where you fit, but what if you don't fit, right? And so I like to think of going away to school at a CTCL type school, a place that's both messy and embracing at the same time. I vividly remember, as the oldest of 6 with a last name that was not Smith, going away to college and thinking, no one knows me. Like, nobody knows me. I could be an entirely different person than I am right now, and no one would know. And while that was both kind of exhilarating to me, it was like, oh my gosh, like, but how will I find my people? Like, where are my people? And so I think that if you're that person coming to a school like one of ours, you can bank on the fact that many of your classmates are going to feel that same way.
Well said, thanks. So we have just a couple minutes left before we're done. Any like final pieces of advice you would offer students who are getting started in their college search?
I will, yes, I will. Please talk to us. In some ways, this year, more than your peers who are ahead of you have had to work, we're going to count on you to reach out to us. We always do that, but we're not going to be able to show up in your high schools like we have in the past, which is also what we're typically doing right now, and we can't do that. But I would say, I hope that you're going to walk away tonight and realize that David and Beth and I are not scary, awful, mean people that hold all the cards in where you're going to go to college, but we're resources. We're resources, your high school counselor is resources. Please, if you have questions, ask us. And then I would say too, as much as you take control of the process, the more you're going to come to an end result that you're happy with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm of the same mind, Karen. I think that while there's so many things that we can't do right now, this also has opened up an opportunity for students who may have had trouble connecting with us in the past, or who may have felt like, I don't want to email that person, or I don't want to call that person. But now that they're seeing us because we're in their living rooms, they're, coming through their phones, whatever, on their screens, we're closer to you in some ways than ever before. And our availability is much more open to everybody, to students at high schools that we typically aren't able to get to, or students who live at distances that would be unlikely to come to our campuses. This has really given us an opportunity to connect with them. And I think that is one piece of, the situation that we're in to just go ahead and grasp and take a hold of it. So yeah, connecting with us, that seems to be an important thing.
David, you're the wise wizard here, moving the slides.
Thanks to Beth, and thanks to Karen. my best. I'm doing my best. But students, we wish you all the best as you get started in your search. Remember that you have so much power and control in this process. Remember that you get to choose where you get to look. You get to choose where you apply, and ultimately you get to choose where to enroll. And remember that there's a lot of schools out there that are looking for students just like you. So this is about you thinking about what's important to you, reflecting on where you want to be going, and we are here to help you along the way. So thanks for joining us. And if you need any additional resources, definitely check out the CTCL website and or follow us on social media. Thanks, everybody.
Good to see you both.
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to make a quick announcement that once you close this window, there will be a very short 4-question survey that will appear if you could complete that. You can certainly sign up for more sessions at www.wacac.com or wacac.com. And this recording will also be available at that same website, wacac.com. Thank you all. Thank you to the presenters.